they measured their flour quite right. So we're going to see exactly how that is going to go. When we do our labs, you're going to have your trays. These are called custard cups. In case you did not know what they were. You're going to have different custard cups. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you your recipe, and we're going to go over equipment. What kind of equipment would you put on this tray to bring forward? Remember, only one person comes forward to get the ingredients, and the other people are in the back preheating the oven. Well, actually, the first day we just make the cookie dough. But who's getting dishwater ready, who's getting like the flour out, the sugar out, because you will each have your own flour and sugar in your kitchen.
Please excuse the interruption. The students from the Wisconsin Education Fair are just getting back. Please excuse them back into class. Thanks.
Okay. So, my recipe says that I need 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. So when we measure flour, on that sheet of paper that I gave you, what does it say to do with the flour? There's a certain way to measure flour. It's towards the bottom. Okay, spoon lightly. So what I always do is just fluff it up. Remember we talked about sifting flour? We want to add air to this product. I'm not the cleanest cook, so you might, the front row sometimes gets a little on the messy side. All right, so I got my 1 cup because I need 2 1/4 cups. So I'm going to measure. I'm not packing it down. You're just freely putting it in here, spooning it. And then you're going to use your what? Metal spatula. Notice I'm just leveling it off. And I'm going to show you the difference there. Flour is needed for structure. That's what's going to give us structure. So that's what I was asking. If you came to back to school night, I don't think they measured their flour quite right because they were really flat. And all of my ingredients, my baking soda, baking powder, things like that, are all up to date. Those are what we call a leveling agent. That's what makes the cookie kind of rise up. And if they're outdated, then they're going to cause the things to be flat. So here it is. Let me show you. The reason why we don't pack this down is because I fluffed it up and added air. Now what I'm doing, in a sense, would be packing it. This is what we don't want to do. Oops, not put your finger in it. Because by packing it, you might notice this is about 1/4 of a cup more, maybe a little less, maybe 1/8 of a cup that I would need to put more flour in here. And obviously, the more flour causes your product to be dry, your cakes will crumble apart. That's the only thing when it comes to measuring you really have to be specific about, is this. If we are going to be making egg fried rice, you put a little bit too much soy sauce in it, not a big deal. I told you this story about the student who mismeasured the red pepper flakes. Not a big deal. Was it spicy? Yeah. But when you make dinners or entrees, it's a little different. When you bake, you got to be pretty precise on what you're doing. So I'm going to fluff it back in here. So that was a big don't do. Right here we go. And I'm not tapping it or anything. I'm just fluffing. If there's air holes in it, that's fine. Don't worry about it. That's perfect. Okay, and the next thing it says is to measure our baking soda and salt in this bowl too. So I need a teaspoon of baking soda. And I keep baking soda in just a small container. We don't use as much of it because of what we do. I'll always keep paper towels up here. This is the one thing that I want to talk about. We talked about cross-contamination when it came to raw products with fresh vegetables that we were going to probably put in a salad. The same thing happens with my ingredients. So even though I just level off this flour, if I measure this baking soda and level it off again, some of those flour particles could get into my baking soda. And is it going to do much to it? I'm not quite sure about the flour, but if we're going to do baking powder and baking soda, it's going to make a difference. If we're going to add salt to this, it's going to make a difference. Some recipes don't call for salt. So we kind of have to be a little bit particular. So you just have to level it off and put it inside there. And then I also need a teaspoon, put the lid back on so it doesn't fall over, of salt. Now I use kosher salt. You're going to notice that the granules are a little bit bigger. Most recipes that I have read lately call for kosher salt. It's a little bit better for you. Same thing, wipe your utensils off, measure it, and put it in there. Okay, then it says to take a whisk and mix these thoroughly. Now, why do you think that we're going to mix our flour, our baking soda, and our salt together with a whisk? What do we talk about that? What do you think, Austin?
What's that?
Why do you think the recipe says to whisk these 3 ingredients together? What am I doing?
Blowing the air out?
No, well, I'm adding some air in, but I'm also mixing them pretty thoroughly, right? Okay. So if there was any clumps in your baking soda or something, salt or something like that, then we added that little bit more air, and I'm going to set it aside. Okay, the next, let me wipe off my counter. See what I mean? I get a little messy. If for some reason you want to make sure, especially when we measure our flour and we're making our cakes and cupcakes, you're more than welcome to wear an apron. They're in the drawer that's not labeled underneath drawer 5. 5 is where you're going to find your oven mitts, and then that drawer underneath of it is empty. So just keep that in, or that drawer underneath of it has aprons in it for you all to wear. Now we need to, says here, beat our butter. And I have 2 sticks of butter that is softened. Most recipes call for softened butter, and I will make sure that the butter is out for you so that you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't call for melted butter. Melted butter will change the texture of your cookies and cakes. So do make sure that if it calls for just regular butter at room temperature or softened, that we do that. Then I need to add some granulated sugar. So this is where, when you're measuring them, you're going to use, what's it say, how to measure sugar on your sheet?
Spoon sugar into dry measuring cup.
Okay, spoon sugar into dry measuring cup. Well, what we always say is to scoop it. You want to spoon your flour, add that air, and we're going to scoop our sugars. So, we need 3/4. What's going to make 3/4? A half and a fourth. So you can go right in here, scoop it, make sure you wipe off your metal spatula, because obviously the last thing we did was salt. We don't want to put salt in our sugar. That wouldn't be very good. So there's our sugar. Fits perfect. Your sugar and flour, like I said, will be back into your kitchens. So if you happen to be one of those that are sitting back there, you can get that stuff measured for you. The next thing it says is that I need brown sugar. And I ran out of light brown sugar, but we can use dark brown sugar too. The difference is, does anyone know what brown sugar is made from? Anybody want to take a guess? It's made from regular sugar, just like this. It's called the granulated sugar. And then it has molasses added to it. So a light brown sugar has just, I think, a tablespoon of molasses, maybe a teaspoon. I just read in a magazine, I'm not quite sure about that one. And then, obviously, dark brown sugar has a little bit more. So this will have just a little bit stronger of a taste, but I don't think it'll make a big difference. The cookies that the kids made yesterday, we just ran out of it. So I'm going to wipe off our measuring cups, just so that we don't, even though it's sugar, we just don't want to cross-contaminate them. How does it say to measure brown sugar?
Firmly into a dry measuring cup.
Yep, pack it. One thing we're going to use is the side of this bag. We're going to pack it in there. And then you can even level it off and everything right inside there. The way to tell if you packed your brown sugar is that when it comes out, it should look like sandcastles. Okay, so there's one. Austin, we have some flies and they're annoying. Okay, let's get that, make sure it's off. And there we go. That's a good packed brown sugar. Right? It's going to come out looking just like you did. You don't want it to crumble apart. When you measure your brown sugar, like I said, you're going to bring your tray up. So I'm going to set my stuff up here. explain to you the reason why. Is say when you were measuring your baking soda and you put it into a bowl and you went back. That baking soda for a teaspoon, mine called for a teaspoon. I'm going to ask you see if you can see the difference. Okay, that's a teaspoon of baking soda. What if someone misread that and it called for a tablespoon of baking soda? Because each one of your ingredients are going to go into something different. Can you kind of tell the difference in those sizes? Yeah. So that's why we measure things and we set it on the trays. I put it right in here because I wanted to do that whisking part for you. But I wanted to make sure that you understood, and this is all clean, so I'm going to put it right back in there because I don't want to be wasteful. But that's why we want to put all ingredients into a separate bowl. Just in case you mismeasured something, hopefully someone in your group will recognize, like, it doesn't look quite right. And then you can bring it back up to me and I can kind of help you out a little bit. Okay, now we need 2 large eggs. Now I'm going to show you, though, how to crack 1 egg. And I don't know if you guys have done this before. And then also how to use an egg separator. Even though our recipe doesn't call to separate our eggs, I'm just going to show it to you. So if you have to do it, you'll be able to do it when I'm not, like back into your kitchens. Because you just take your 2 eggs and go back. Well, I've got a little bit of soda. Has anyone ever cracked an egg with a knife? Before. You have? 2 ways you can do an egg. Obviously, you can use the side of the countertop to crack an egg, or you can use a knife. And the way to do it is just hold it, and then just chop it right in half. What it does is that shell doesn't break as much, and so you don't risk putting the eggs inside of it. You can use a knife, or you can use this metal spatula. I've used a metal spatula, it just works a little bit better. And so, you want to make sure that when you crack an egg, obviously look for shells. Most of the time, if you do use the metal spatula, you'll be okay. But it's just a better way to just check for those shells. Now, I'm just going to keep this egg separate, because I want to show you what an egg separator is. And the difference between it. Now, I'll crack it over here. Why would we not want to crack our egg on the bowl that we're going to put it into? Yes, Chase?
Contamination.
What?
It could spill, stuff could spill out of the egg that you opened it from.
How about, what if a shell gets down inside there?
Or that.
Yeah. If a shell gets down inside there, I'll give you a tip. If you wet your finger and then try to take the shell out, you should have no problem. You put a dry finger in there, you're going to be digging for a while. Because for some reason, with the water and the egg white, it just totally will come out. So, yeah, kind of gross, isn't it? Okay, that's the up. That's how we separate an egg. Kind of grody. It feels a little bit like snot. Sorry, we'll cut that one out of the video. Okay, so here's my white and here's my yolk. Depending on what you need, you would just save your yolk or save the white. For this recipe, we need both. I just wanted to show you how to use that because it's going to be something that you're going to need in some recipes. After we mess with eggs, what should we do? Wash our hands because eggs carry what?
Salmonella.
Salmonella. Good job. All right. We don't want to actually spread salmonella to anybody. Now I need 1 3/4 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chunks, or an 11.5-ounce bag. So my bag has 11.5 ounces in it. So I'm not going to measure it out. I'm going to trust that Nestle put the correct amount in here for us to use. So I'm just going to put this in. Okay, the first step in making any type of cookies says to blend your butter and sugar together. We mixed up our flour like it said. Now, this doesn't say to blend, oh, this one does. So the last recipe I made, when I made for the first class, said blend your butter and sugars together. And so you have to keep in mind that these are both sugars to put in here. This recipe does say to be the butter granulated sugar, so So we'll pour that in there. And then it also says the brown sugar. The one thing with brown sugar, once you pack it, I'm just going to use my hands and kind of help break it up a little bit. That'll just help so it doesn't fly out on the people on the front row as much. You might get a little on you anyway, Max, because I'm kind of a messy cooker.
Yeah.
Oh well. A messy cook is a fun cook. And then it also says, and our vanilla extract. Oh, we didn't measure that. Where did I miss that? A teaspoon of vanilla. You will always have a garbage bowl up here that looks like this. Oh, you wipe this off. I don't know what was on here. Actually, it'll be this bowl. Anytime